Joining me now is Saira Rao. She's running for Colorado's 1st District for US Congress. She's a Justice Democrat, and she has a really interesting story to tell. It's a Democratic district, first of all, so that's interesting in and of itself. And then second of all, Saira, you say that you were a huge Hillary Clinton supporter. You even named a plant after her.
I did.
And you have now become disillusioned. So talk to me about why.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. And I want to say the opening song never gets old. So I wanted to get that in there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so let me tell you my background. I was a hardcore Democratic Party establishment kind of a gal. The first person I ever voted for when I was 18 was Bill Clinton. I named my ficus plant in college after Hillary. That plant is still alive like 25 years later, as an aside. And just spent 25 years really, knocking doors, making calls, donating money, holding fundraisers. And to just give you a sense, my daughter, who at the time was 7 in the fall of 2016, she eschewed soccer that season to canvass with me every day after school. In fact, we canvassed for my opponent, Diana DeGette. And what happened after the election is my family, as you can see, I'm brown. My family experienced the worst racism we've ever experienced in our life and continue to. And it was the first time I asked for something in return from those folks that I helped get elected. And I talked to a bunch of them, and it was a version of, why do you have to make everything about race, Saira? Not everything is about race, and we have bigger issues, which is incredibly privileged, right? That's the dictionary definition of white privilege, is when your race doesn't affect you really directly. Being brown, being black, race is a matter of life or death for us. So last December, so we're talking less than 6 months ago, I wrote an essay titled "I'm a Brown Woman Who's Breaking Up with the Democratic Party" for the Huffington Post, and it went viral. And that essay was about being tokenized, being used, being called upon for our votes and our money and our networks. But when it came time to talk about the things that directly affected us, Muslim ban, Black Lives Matter, Brown Lives Matter, police brutality, all of that, it wasn't of interest to those folks, the white people that we helped desperately to get elected. What happened after that was it went viral. The story went totally viral. And the response is not going to shock anyone listening, I don't think. Kind of fell into 3 camps. One, from the party establishment, bye Felicia, see you later, you're a party traitor. At the other end, white, black, brown, gay, straight, male, female, we're with you. And we used to think that the Democratic Party was the lesser of 2 evils. Now we think they're worse than Republicans because they're hypocrites. We are no longer voting, which is a terrifying thing to disenfranchise yourself like that. And then the third bucket was, why don't you run for office? Why don't you run for Congress? And I'm thinking to myself, again, this is less than 6 months ago. I'm thinking to myself, I've got 2 small kids. I have a company that I started 6.5 years ago with a close friend of mine, In This Together Media, that had just taken off spectacularly. We produce diverse kids' books. Why would I run for Congress? Can't we just expect more from our representatives? And then something really stuck with me over the Christmas break, and it was the following. The beef I had with these decades-long independents, these corporate Democrats who take millions of dollars from companies, who are in 100% safe seats. So Denver, District 1 of Colorado, is one of the safest seats in the country. They don't use their power and their privilege to advocate for the most disenfranchised. They advocate for their corporate donors. And if I didn't use my power and privilege, I'm able-bodied, I have class privilege, I can afford childcare, my husband is supportive. If I don't use my power and privilege to at least challenge the status quo, then shame on me. So I filed in the middle of January, so 5 months ago exactly, and it's been fast and furious. So that's where I am now.
So Saira, I'm still intrigued by this story because such a fervent supporter of the Clintons, and you were a Wall Street lawyer for some time in your career. What's the straw that broke the back, right? So you talked about disenfranchisement and how they're not sticking up for you overall, but was there one issue where you kind of a light went off and you're like, oh, yeah, wait a minute, these guys aren't for me at all?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the way it feels to me a lot like is a total awakening. I got woke. And I would say the straw that broke the camel's back, and then a bunch of things happened after. If you'll recall, the first Muslim ban was last year, early February of last year, and planes, were landing all over the country, and families were being ripped apart, like we're seeing it again now. And one of my closest friends, Neethi Pawar, is the president of the South Asian Bar Association here, and is just a total amazing woman and activist. And she does what she always does. And she spent her weekend at the Denver International Airport helping families on the ground. Our representative had her town hall, typically only has one a year in district, had it a few days after that Muslim ban, while ICE raids were happening all over the district. She had it in the police building. Okay, who doesn't go to the police building? Brown and black people during that time. So my friend goes, and she's one of 6 out of 1,000 non-white people in the room, and stood up and asked the representative, what are you doing to make your brown and black constituents feel safe? To which she was told, why would they feel unsafe? Talk about being out of touch. And then said, okay, well, what are you doing about DACA? To which she was told, well, there's an executive order for DACA. We're all set, and we know how that ended. She didn't leave it there. Followed up, went to her office, met with some of her staff, and one of her staff members told her to her face, your concerns, I get why you're concerned, but just so you know, civil rights are technically not one of the representative's issues. That is when the light bulb went off in my head. It was so explicit. And then, sort of my ears perked up, my eyes were open, my senses were alive. And I just saw it everywhere, right? Like, why is it that Democrats have such a hard time saying Black Lives Matter? Why is it that they're not marching for Black Lives Matter? Where is the outrage over police brutality? I mean, I'll tell you what, I feel silly that I'm now 44, and it wasn't until I was 42 that this occurred to me, but I'm sure happy that it did. Better late than never.
Right, and you've found a way to outraise the incumbent on cash, even without taking corporate money, which is amazing, and that's great. So I wanted to, before we go, I wanted to get a sense of what your top priorities are if you get into Congress.
Sure, corporate PAC money, what you had mentioned right at the top of the show while you're going to Washington. Corporate PAC money in politics is not a sideshow, it's a main event. And it's like a big dark cloud hanging over Capitol Hill, and nothing can get done until we get that out. So we're the richest country on the planet. Why can't we have healthcare for all? Why can't we eliminate student loan debt? It's because our Congress folks are answering to big pharma. They're answering to healthcare companies. I think we have to vote out every single person in Congress from both parties who are taking corporate PAC money. So that's number one, and passing corporate, campaign finance reform out of the gate, elimination of student loan debt, Clean Dream Act, defunding ICE, I want to be clear about this right now. Taxpayers, you and me, and people watching are paying right now for ICE and its fascist ways. We are paying for that. We need to defund it immediately. And frankly, I think every person in Congress, every Democrat in Congress should be on a hunger strike right now until they defund ICE. Shame on them. Seriously, shame on them. And comprehensive criminal justice reform, ending the school to prison pipeline. We've got a lot of work to do, and we can't do it until we get new leaders who are not beholden to corporate PACs.
But Saira, I can't tell if you're passionate enough for the job. Well, I like the conversion and I love the passion, and obviously I couldn't agree more with your priorities, especially when it comes to getting money out of politics. Until we do that, we're doomed to repeat this cycle over and over and over again. And from my perspective, not only politics but in media, when those knuckleheads on TV are constantly talking about, like, I don't know why they voted this way. It's a big mystery to them. Well, mystery's been solved.
Right. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to connect the dots.
That's right. It's the donor money that controls it all.
Yep.
All right. Saira Rao is a Just Democrat. Her website is sairaforcongress.com. And if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook, all the links to donate or to volunteer will be in the description box below. You just click on them, small dollar donations make a giant difference. That's how we've got to get enough people in Congress to vote money out of politics so we can end the private financing and go to public financing.
Agreed.
So we can't keep doing small dollar donations for the rest of our lives. But we have to get enough people into Congress to go to public financing.
Yes, absolutely. So please donate and sign up to volunteer. That'd be awesome too. We're in the final 7 days here.
Absolutely. So that election is coming up. Everybody get active, and obviously we'll cover it on the Young Turks. Saira Rao, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.